jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show.
Join us as we cover many an insane movie and numerous cult TV phenomenons. Are you ready to get jacked up? Are you with us? Then listen on.
Listener discretion is advised. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. It's a jacked up review show. Jacked up review show.
Welcome back, ladies and gents. We got Ken Krantz from the I Love Rock and Roll podcast. How are you here today?
I'm doing well, thank you.
Alrighty, lovely. So, long time coming. We decided to dive into Trent Reznor, Atticus Ross, and the rest of the Nine Inch Nails company. His various accomplishments. And so, I know you've been to rock and punk, Krantz. What was your introduction to this band? It emerged in the late 80s.
My last name's actually Krantz with an N.
Krantz, sorry.
That's okay.
I'm the king of Krantz.
My introduction to them was I had a friend who had Pretty Hate Machine.
Yeah, okay. From the ground running.
Yeah. Well, I'm a little older, so I remember him playing that for me, and I thought it was okay. For some reason, I was just reading right before I came on here. I had no idea that was their debut album. For some reason, I thought they'd had a few albums before that. But where I really got into them was in the 90s when they put out, what's that album? The one with Closer. Downward Spiral.
Yes, okay. So you got into much later when they're, having their music even featured in other blockbusters like Natural Born Killers and what have you. So I gotcha. Okay.
Well, the thing is though, like Downward Spiral was their second album. And I thought it was like their third or fourth or something.
Well, and it doesn't help that when you go through like the library, it seems like there's like 3 different remixes and remasters of Downward Spiral that they know it's hot. But yeah, going through the whole discography, even on Wikipedia, is a little overwhelming at first because I don't know if they had just a bunch of singles and then they released it with the rest of the thing or how they did it, but I know what you mean.
Yeah, I think they had like some EPs out or something. I just didn't.
That's what's also confusing. There's so many EPs to each of their albums, and don't get me wrong, they're worth seeking out, but it's so much. So I mentioned movies briefly. Definitely, if anyone hasn't heard their movie soundtracks, definitely, some of Downward Spiral plays at the end of Man on Fire. You can definitely see some of their other classic 90s songs play in The Avengers end credits, Terminator Salvation, 300, Live Free or Die Hard, and more recent stuff they did for movies like Doom, Social Network, Book of Eli, Gone Girl, The Crow, as well as they used a lot of their free-to-use album for nonprofit purposes, Ghosts, in that excellent Ken Burns PBS documentary on the Vietnam War. So, I mean...
Oh, did they? I watched that documentary. I had no idea that was them.
Yeah, I had seen him interview with it before, and since I had all 4 albums of Ghosts, downloaded to my computer, I was listening to it. I'm like, oh, I've heard these samples before, and good on them. They don't have to pay a giant fee. And I mean, I think
They did a song for David Lynch, The Lost Highway,
Yep.
back in the 90s, Perfect Drug. And that's still to this day one of my favorites.
Yeah. I'm very biased. I don't have too many songs which just make me say, oh, I don't want to come back to that, because I just get the moodiness that they're going for. I in many ways, I mean, I use this to even get over depression when I would lose a family member. I kid you not, during college, because it was totally that kind of fuel for that just healing kind of music. And have you ever had any music that's spoken to you in that kind of way?
Oh, like depression music? Oh, yeah. They were always good for that because it was so dark and brooding. I think this is gonna sound, I think it depends like what the root of the depression is at the time, that I'll seek out different things. My latest bout, Scott Weiland was doing it for me.
And so you were pretty up to date when they came out, and then did you ever keep up with them, or did you kind of just listen to a bunch of their stuff after the fact?
You know, I always, I'm a huge Reznor fan. I've seen them live a bunch of times. Oh,
sweet.
And they're amazing live. That dude is so talented, and I think that I think with all like the Hollywood work that he's doing now, I feel like some of the edges are, you know, like they've rounded off a bit. He doesn't seem as dark and brooding.
Well, he said in like some like NPR like interview, like as the new stuff was coming out, he was literally mentally and physically healing. He didn't have I think his father had passed away or something, but a lot of the whole grimness was fading. He just felt very healed after doing this for so long with such a successful career.
Yeah, well, that's a good, honest answer, right?
Well, and after that dispute with Universal Music and telling his fans, please still it, you know, they don't respect you or me. I think that was just healing to him. He overall, because he knew, I have a loyal fan base. I made a dent. I'm still being honored by the various Grammys and award shows in both formats, you know, in movies and still in the music industry, and launching other side projects with friends like Gary Newman. I think he just, at that point, he's like, I can't go wrong. I can't be bitching now. I have nothing to bitch about. I'm so happy.
Yeah, but you know what? Like a lot of dudes or a lot of artists try to keep that image, that tortured, depressed, brooding image. So good on him for, you know, admitting that's not what he's like. But to answer your question, the Downward Spiral was my big one. Every time he releases music, I'll check it out. I don't always love the albums or stay with them. I'm trying to think offhand. I remember like in the Fragile, that double album, there were some good songs on. He's got like every album you'll find at least 3 or 4 great songs. And then Hesitation Marks. I think like
Hesitation Marks. That's another very visual.
Not that I know their discography inside and out, but that's one I'm still listening to, you know, a few years on after its release.
Stellar. And would you say he really just whenever he's announcing anything more recent, like I remember Come Back Haunted, that single, and even just his more recent album, you know, it was a totally different kind of feel. And I think compared to other artists who, again, just kind of want to just play their greatest hits or tributes or take it less seriously, I think he just wants to just, at this point, just create a totally different vision. What's your take on his new style?
I think he's sort of doing the same thing that Bowie did, you know, like now that the music industry has changed so much, And you don't like, you're not, there's just aren't hit singles for rock stars anymore. There's no big rock albums. There's no rock's not going number one. So when you stop chasing, not that they were ever like a pop band chasing hit singles, but they got a lot of radio play. And when you stop chasing that and you're just making music that you find interesting, I think that's when you do your best work. And I think that's probably what's happening with him now.
That's a good point. I didn't think of that, but yeah, it's so true. Because I mean, he even collaborated with Bowie, you know. Back
Yes.
I'm Afraid of Americans, and I think that helped the overall flow of his narrative. It's like I can be a little more looser with my material. I don't have to be as dark and brooding and poetic. I can be more kind of just a little frantic, but blunt, I guess, for lack of a better description.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he did that whole tour with Bowie back in the 90s. I think it's obvious listening to Trent's music that he was a huge influence on Bowie, that Bowie was a huge influence on him, But then I think he ended up influencing Bowie also. And I think that, that Earthling album that Bowie did, they called it like a drum and bass album, but it really was more kind of industrial, like the early ones.
Pretty much. They were trying to get their industrial influence while kind of promote it as whatever, you know, was hot at the time.
Right.
Very good way to say it. So out of just their whole things, how would you introduce other people to this, do you think?
9 Inch, that's
yeah, where would you begin? Probably would you start from the top, or would you just kind of just find just ones that you're just listening to more often than not?
It's an acquired taste, you know. You're not going to turn everybody onto them, but listen. I would start. I'm a believer of start with the thing that would probably offend your senses the most.
Yeah.
And because then if you like it, you're going to get that whole band, you know? So I would play, you know, even with its graphic imagery, maybe I would play Closer for somebody. Trent has this amazing thing where he's writing these really dark, visceral, brooding lyrics, and the music is atmospheric and reflects the lyrics, but they're also like, he's got an ear for pop. Like he's writing, some of it's just incredibly catchy.
Right.
And that's not a combo that you see a lot, like dark, brooding and super catchy and radio friendly.
Yeah. Anyone else would have been like, I'm getting the fuck out of here. I can't do this. I can't compromise.
Right. Yeah. But I don't think it was him compromising. I think that he's just got, look, Bowie did the same thing. Especially the later era Bowie, it was very dark lyrics.
Sure too. Cause there's never any moment where you're just like, I feel like you censored, you know, like, say a comedian who's doing something kid friendly or anything, you know?
Right. Yeah. But I think that he has an ear, you know, he's got an ear for catchy music, and he just wraps that into his dark style.
Totally. I never got a sense that he didn't want to do it. He didn't want to unleash it in any way. He was pretty much down for the count. He was down to do it.
Yeah.
So let's do a quick swipe on your podcast. You've been doing this for quite a while. It's been so great to just hear your various other local comedy scene friends just chime in. I got a little bit of a sense of why you did it in the first place, but what made you just really finally say, it's like, hey, I'm gonna commit to my own podcast. I'm gonna keep talking about this with my buds and some other musicians.
Well, I'm so yeah. Thank you for bringing that up. The name of it's called I Love Rock and Roll.
Yeah.
And it's funny. So I don't know how old you are. So I don't know how.
I'm in my 30s.
30s. So I started. So my co-host, who's also a stand-up comedian, Chip Crenshaw, we originally, I don't know if you remember the show Different Strokes.
Yes.
But we're both super fans of that dumb 80s show. And originally, this was going to be a Different Strokes podcast.
Really?
And yeah, we were during the pandemic, there was a cable channel that was running it every night. And him and I would watch and text each other just jokes about it. And eventually we were like, maybe, like, because I thought it was so funny, just our text conversations. And we were like, oh, maybe we should do a Different Strokes podcast. And then, right, it was like we had it, we were going to call it What You Talking About. Like, we had it all ready to go. And then at the last minute, I've always been a huge fan. If I had any musical talent, I would have gone into music instead of comedy. But at the last minute, I said, I've always had this other idea of just bullshitting about music for an hour, and we can get our comedian friends, and eventually maybe we can get some musicians. And he's a huge music fan too. Our tastes are fairly similar, so we thought we'd give it a shot. And it's sort of, at least as far as booking guests go, it sort of took off a lot faster than either one of us thought it would.
Right.
But we've gotten some incredible guests on it.
Yeah, the last one was really great. Just seeing the one David Bowie contributor that was like, he was just answering like 10 dozen different questions on all his other albums, and you're like, that connection makes sense now. Oh
Yeah.
shit. No way.
Yeah.
I thought it was just a theory. I thought it was just a rumor. Well, you just confirmed it for me.
Yeah. Tim LaFave, he played bass on Black Star, and it's funny. The way I'm getting guests, it's like one of my high school friends is buddies with him. And now I people seeking me out, like, hey, I know this person. You should book them.
You were good enough to talk to this guy, so therefore you get 10 free, bookings.
Yeah. Yep. And every musician, even the ones who aren't known or household names, or every musician has crazy stories, just like every comedian.
Totally.
Every musician's gonna give you a great hours conversation.
Absolutely. They really are doing it out of the basis of their heart. They're not doing it just because they're bored during the pandemic. They legit want to actually reveal some often talked about stuff. I'm sure they can't remember the last time they were talked about or interviewed, except back in their heyday. So
yeah. I mean, some of these names, I don't know if you remember. Oh God, now I can't remember the name of their band. It was like a dude with an eye patch, like a pirate.
Probably not.
Dr. Hook and the Medicine Show from the 70s.
Well, unfortunately, that was way before mine, and I don't think that ever got replayed on PBS. But
yeah,
the beauty though is you don't have to wait on a resource, or Netflix now is like, or even YouTube. You can literally just search something out, and there's probably a third-party site that has some variety show.
Well, yeah. Well, we ended up. I have a friend who's a comedian, and it's his girlfriend's uncle, and they, they had a #1 single on the charts in the 70s. They backed up the Grateful Dead at one point. They had like a pretty major career. And their together is now like 84 years old, and it's been hired for music for decades. Told us stories about taking acid with Shel Silverstein. It's all these guys have wild stories.
Right.
We just interviewed. I just put it up. I think today. We just interviewed Kennedy from MTV, like back in the 90s.
Oh wow.
she had the most, because she was at MTV in their heyday. She was good friends with Trent Reznor, actually. If you read her book about MTV's heyday, there's a good chunk of it is Trent Reznor stories.
Sweet.
But she had stories about hanging out with Nirvana while they taped Unplugged, and snowboarding with the Beastie Boys, and interviewing Trent and Bowie. It's shit that I can talk about for hours. So I have a ton of fun.
Yeah, and I can tell it just warms you guys each minute. It is just like you're inspired to get to the next part, you know?
Yeah.
There's never a moment where it's just like, okay, we're fucking out of time, you know?
Yeah.
And again, your other commentators are great because they really do pitch in, and you're also pretty good about just going from the next stage, just regardless of how you want to sum up their evolution, just like you pretty much get into the mass appeal. It's like, when did was everyone listening to this in your head versus everyone was recommending it, or and then you just go from there, and your guests are really good at, I mean, especially the Cars one. That's what cracked me up the most, because those were a bunch of comedians who did a mockumentary, and you got such a backstory on why they even wanted to attempt it before streaming and festivals were more picky.
I was fascinated with that because we had set out to do just an episode on the Cars. We had booked, it's a funny story, we had booked another comic, and she told us her favorite band was the Cars. So I'll always go to YouTube or Amazon and look for documentaries on whoever we're talking about. And so I went looking for a Cars documentary, and I can only find one on Amazon. And you'd think like they're a Hall of Fame band. They were enormous in the 80s. They sold tens of millions of records, and you would think that there would be a lot out there on them. And all I could find was this one documentary, which, as it turns out, wasn't even a real documentary. It's like you said, it was this mockumentary that was mostly making fun of the Cars. And it turned out that it was a stand-up comedian who I sort of knew, put the whole thing together and directed and wrote it. And it was all from an idea that he had watching Live Aid on MTV back in the 80s.
Totally. And God also just explaining the spoofs moments is like, everyone forgets Andy Warhol directed a video.
I don't know if you got a chance to watch the movie, and I say this because I love
is it
our
still
guests
on there?
that did it. It's on Amazon Prime, and I knew.
Right. But is it still on there? Because they take stuff down.
I should have known something was up when they told me I could rent it for 99 cents or buy it for $1.99.
Mm-hmm.
So it is gloriously bad. It's one of those movies that's so bad that you can't look away. I've probably watched it 5 times.
It's stellar. Anything else you want to plug? Any other side projects or other big things coming up?
No, just listen to I Love Rock and Roll anywhere you stream podcasts. You can follow us on Twitter at Rock and Roll Pod. Or you can follow me on social media, Ken Krantz, Krantz, the word comic, and then you can find me on social media. Then you can see my show dates and things like that if you want to come catch a live show.
Totally. Thank you ever so much for this opportunity.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Quick and to the point. We like it.
Let me know when this, tag me, I'll retweet it. Let me know when it's up, that sort of thing.
You know it. And sorry for butchering your name there, but yeah.
Oh, no worries. Listen, I've done it too. I had G Love on and his real name is Garrett Dutton, and I called him Garrett Sutton at the end, which was pretty embarrassing, you know. For be one thing if it was like a comedian that you could play it off, but
Fixing in post, not a thing.
yeah.
Well, you owned this. Thank you so much. You be safe out there.
Yeah, you too. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Zoom's pretty good at avoiding anyone getting COVID during a studio interview.
Yeah, well, you know, I started this during the pandemic. I had no idea how, you know, I used to have another podcast where me and another comic, we would have to meet at her house or my house every week, and it was not really
That's actually
annoying.
how I got into podcasting, and I don't mean to sound like I'm shitting on him, but yeah. I mean, before we were even trying Skype or Zoom, I would meet at like 2 different filmmakers' houses, and then it got to where it's just like, well, you know, the host was so worried about the video feed as opposed to worrying about the audio, and the female host was not contributing at all. It was basically, you know, like just, oh, I don't want to do this topic. It's just like, you just committed. You can't do that.
Yeah.
Like if someone were to invite you to a party and then halfway through saying, I'm tired of prepping for it. You know.
Yeah. Exactly. And they're not easy, especially when you do, you know, when you have topics like this. It's like, I say, it's like every week, it's like writing a term paper.
Totally. And very well said. I think you helped summed up a lot of people how Trent has just a very unusual just career that's just fascinating in its own right. And I mean, I mentioned Gary Newman. I would love to dive into his work because so many people seem to just want to talk about, you know, his singles, and then just I don't think any of his other material has really gotten any airplay. I've heard some of his stuff like on an independent radio station at morning hours, but that's it.
Yeah, he's one of those guys that probably doesn't get the respect that he should.
Yeah, when he got to that one song where he was talking about how I'm melting with everybody, I was like, yeah, you're definitely melting with me, dude. This is making me sad. Appreciate it. In fact, and it never fails. When I even tell everyone that a new album is out, they just want to instantly just spoof his song. Oh my God. I was like, dude, that's just the beginning. That's not even the...
But for the record, that was a great song.
It's a great song, but I mean,
great song.
I don't know. It's like if you were to just, I don't know. I feel like that's just, I don't know. Various other 80s.
Yeah, well,
artists and even just movie actors. Everyone just pays attention to their first 2 hits, and the rest is blah. Never paid attention.
Yeah, it's too bad. Because a lot of these people, like 9 Inch, that Hesitation Marks, I thought was their best album other than Downward Spiral.
Yeah, and I mean, you're also good at just diving into what makes everything apples and oranges versus top of the charts and never raises to that level again. And it's just so hard to do, especially if you love it all or dig most of it. It's just like, how do I be constructive here? How do I separate it all?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you again for having me.
Thank you. This was a blast. And again, you just take care of business, and I'm looking forward to your next show.
Yeah, check out the. I honestly think that this Kennedy interview is. I think she was the best guest we've had.
Absolutely. I get into the root of the appeal.
We'll return after these messages.
JURS Podcast is proud to promote AutoCorrect, an independent film company with experienced industry professionals who can serve all your film industry needs. They include self-tapes, voice actor recordings, demo reel editing, script revisions,
headshots, and much more. They're actor correct at your request. Book them on Instagram.
Hey, feeling down? Feeling low? Not enough podcasts about movies in your life? Why not try
They must be destroyed on sight.
the new Podcast Cure-All? Sure to get you right with the world and on a path to better living. We have exploitation, we have Italian horror, we have zombies, we have slashers, we have crime films, we have spaghetti westerns, we even have sci-fi and sex comedies. So take a dose of
They must be destroyed on sight.
as needed, and let the hosts, Lee Russell, Daniel Harper, Paul Romali, and the odd guest host cure what ails you.
Warning, may cause atrophy, African consumption, black fever, bone shave, chin cough, colic, cramp colic, dropsy of the brain, elephantitis, grocer's itch, jaundice, mania, miasma, mortification, palsy, Pott's disease, rheumatism, scurvy, St. Anthony's fire, summer complaint, and worm fit in some people. Consult a physician before listening.
Did you ever see a film at such a young age it left you traumatized with cinematic wounds? Necrophilia. It's a dead issue, man. Don't push it. Cinema Psyops is a weekly podcast documenting an ongoing experiment on the mind of an unwilling test subject.
No one should have to watch this movie.
Oh, no one should have to watch this?
No one should have to watch this movie.
Surprisingly, it's not a topic that a lot of people really want to tackle.
I'm shocked, Prudes.
I know, really.
Right?
It's the next sexual frontier that no one wants to explore.
I am, in the most sincerest of senses, disappointed in you.
It takes a powerful goddess like Connie, jam her arm down the monster's throat and kill it. Oh, I'm still tripping out over that. Even as a kid, I was like, I gotta find a girl like that. Every week, I get a new look of disappointment that I never thought I could get out of it.
Unimaginable. At 12 years old, you should not be watching this movie.
Obviously.
At 13, you should not be. 14, you shouldn't be. I'm not entirely sure even 17-year-olds should be watching this.
Just because you're offended by something doesn't mean that you have the right to demand that it doesn't exist. Watching this film again, I had all of this like little nerd glee with everything that kept
Little
popping
history all popping up
absolutely.
at you.
So I totally loved this film.
Hey, I know why you couldn't see that. It's because your brain's warped from watching this shit at 12 years old.
Yeah, this is a rough movie. I told you ahead of time when we were getting ready to do it that it was
How
going to be
did
a
you
rough
watch
one.
this shit at 12?
Because physical wounds heal, cinematic ones don't. Listen to Cinema Psyops.
Hey everybody, I'm Corey.
And I'm Zach, and we're the hosts of Podcasting After Dark, a cast dedicated to late-night horror and sci-fi of the 80s and 90s, often found on HBO and Cinemax.
You know, the movies your parents didn't want you watching as a kid. You can find us every other week on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Podbean, and Stitcher.
This is what you want.
This is what you get.
Greetings, friends. My name is Dean Legero, and I'm the host of the 3324 podcast. I invite you to join me and my lifelong friend Eric Huber to come with us as we discuss the music and movies that shaped our life. Each week, we'll pick an album or film that we really connect to, and not only give you some great info and trivia, but also discuss, debate, and celebrate what it means to us and the journey it took us on. We also look forward to hearing from you and giving us some of your picks for us to check out and discuss. I think it'll be a really fun experience, so come along with us for the ride. You can find us on your favorite podcast provider and at 3324.buzzsprout.com. Thanks for your time, and welcome to the 3324 family.
It's time, let's check our cue, baby. Pair it with a couple brews, baby. We love good movies. We love the bad ones too. So we watch them all and pass their lessons on to you. Oh yeah. Everything I learned from movies helps to make life a little bit groovy. With a one-liner plot holes and gratuitous movies. It's time to get busy with your friend Steve and Izzy. At eilfm.podbean.com.
We now continue with our program.
Follow us on the web on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. The The podcast is available on Podbean, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Anchor, Apple, and anywhere else podcasts are available. Feel free to review our show and leave comments on any of those sites. Thanks a million for listening.
It's a Jack